Welcome. I am Christina Campbell, your host for Sexual Freedom for Women, where you can learn how to lose your inhibitions, deeply connect, and finally experience the pleasure you have always desired. Today, I'm really excited to introduce to you Tanja Diamond. Tanja is a Tantra expert, and I'm going to read a little short snippet of her bio, and then she can tell us a little bit more about herself if she desires, and we'll get into this topic of Tantra. Tanja Diamond is an authority on expanding the limits of human potential and lineage Tantra master, peak arousal expert, master coach trainer, and business alchemist. Tanja is a two-time best-selling author and works worldwide expanding consciousness in all aspects of life and business. She created and uses the technologies of modern Tantra, the 6 foundations of integrated living and high-speed evolution. The 5 evolutions to life mastery, to guide you to your personal freedom, where you will experience integrated intelligence, a source of mastery in your being. Tanja, thank you so much for being here.
I am always, thank you. I'm super excited to be here. And I have to say, whenever I get to go through the process of listening to my bio, I'm always like, okay. Woo, should we I don't know, pop, celebrate, whatever, anyway, it's awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here, and I love the topic, sexual freedom for women. Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed, sexual freedom for women. So I would love for you to tell our audience, how you started on this journey. How did you get into Tantra? And then we will get into what Tantra is.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to give everybody the Reader's Digest version because it's actually a lifelong story of how I got involved in Tantra. And I'm a lineage Tantra master, which is different than a Neo-Tantra teacher. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. But basically it was like saying I had a homing device. I had this little beacon that kept going off inside of me to look for this specific person. And it was a long, sorted, exciting tale of finally finding my teacher and my lineage Tantra teacher, and being able to discern that it was indeed him and that it was authentic, and going through the arduous, difficult, life-threatening process of actually learning lineage Tantra. And that's exactly what it is like. Scary, arduous, hard, life-threatening, and everything else. So this is very different from Neo-Tantra, which is what most people are calling Tantra today. So my Neo-Tantra training was a lot more simple. That is really done by, workshops and books. And there were a few people certifying people way back when. I've been on the Tantra path for the last, oh my gosh, I'm getting old, 35 years. I keep saying 25 years, 25 years ago, but yeah, apparently a decade has passed since then. Anyway, so a very, very long time. And I've studied with people actually all over the world, and both in the Neo-Tantra and my Tantra lineage. So suffice to say, I got a lot of education behind me and a lot of training and a lot of life experience in it, which I think is the most important part. Tantra, so I can just jump right into what these things actually are. Okay, great. So Tantra, lineage Tantra, classical Tantra, these things are really a powerful technology for transformation. These are specific rituals, specific tools. These are not, I was born tantric. These were not, I feel like I'm tantric. These are actually rigorous, disciplined art form and technology of science that goes back way, way beyond anybody can even say. When Sanskrit showed up and people were starting to write about Tantra, and Sanskrit was the language of Tantra in India, I would even call that newer Tantra than the lineage Tantra, because the stuff that people hold in lineages, which is a direct transmission from guru to student, most gurus only ever took one student in their lifetime, and they would teach you things, and when you were ready, which was, you never knew when, you could actually receive the energetic transmission of parts of their lineage. So it was never that part wasn't spoken. And so that goes back to all their teachers. So you could encompass a lineage that has thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of teachers in it. So it's extremely powerful. It's kind of magical, mystical, and those types of things. And, one of the questions people always ask me is, what was your teacher's name? What is the lineage you have? Well, my teacher didn't have a name. That's the point. It's a sound, but it's a sound that nobody can hear unless you have a specific energy. And so that makes me look like a freak and a flake and, you know, somebody who's not credible to a lot of people. And so I don't really talk a lot about my lineage training. Most people know me more for the Neo-Tantra training because that's what most people want anyway. Tantra masters usually, like, one of the rituals is, you know, dump your guts out into the Ganges River, you know, and wash them and put them back in your body. Like, who's going to do that today? You know, right? Right, exactly.
Understand that.
You know, death rituals, you know, things to do with corpses and all sorts of really, like, whoa, kind of blow your mind stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're pretty sanitized, and we really are looking for things that are like prettier and nicer. Love. Everybody says Tantra is all about love, when in actuality, that's just so far from the truth. It isn't even funny. Tantra is about reality. It's about nature. It's about you studying yourself so deeply that you understand the workings of the universe, because everything is paralleled. That's the technology of classical Tantra. Now, some classical Tantra schools had rituals of sex in them, but they weren't just like orgy sex. They were actually still very specifically outlined, very specific rituals. It could take years to build a foundation up before you did the ritual of sexual intercourse with another person. As you see, Neo-Tantra has diverged from this greatly. And Neo-Tantra was actually started, and I'm going to forget the year, but I think it was 11th century, or in the 11th century, that this guy said, hey, wow, all these Westerners keep being interested in, you know, these sexual components, erotic things that are going on in the East. So he was pretty smart, and he got together with a couple of people and decided, hey, if we put yoga together with Ayurvedic medicine, together with some ancient Eastern sexual practices that we teach the kings, who people have harems and things like that. And we put all these things together, we create Tantra. You know, people come to ashrams, they hang out, we can teach all these people stuff, and everything's great. That's kind of where that all started.
Wow, that long ago started Neo-Tantra.
Right, what I'm calling Neo-Tantra. And then there's the Western Tantra, which is the 60s. You know, people coming over, Osho and other people coming over and saying, oh, hey, you sex crave. You know, we were in the process then of like freedom, right, free love, free sex, woohoo. So it was all this kind of more spiritual love and just connect with each other and have amazing long orgasms. Who doesn't love that? Right. And all of this great stuff. So to be clear, I teach both. I don't think one is bad or whatever, but, you know, I do get called the Tantra police because I do label these things because I want people to understand the difference. And please understand that most teachers who are teaching Tantra today and using the word Tantra that don't know they aren't, it's not really their fault either, because their teachers told them that, and their teachers told them that. So we're not discerning about the labels. So today, when we see Neo-Tantra, which is most of what we see, what Sting talked about when he was doing Tantra and his 9-hour orgasms, and all of these, American Pie, the movie American Pie brought Tantra front and center. These are Neo-Tantra techniques, which are incredibly important in a society that is sexually repressed and pornified at the same time.
Yes.
We're on extremes.
So what is Neo-Tantra? Why are, you know, like you just said, we are repressed and pornified. So what is it that Neo-Tantra can give us as a path? You know, what are we seeking, and what can we get from studying this path?
Well, the great thing about Neo-Tantra in the hands of somebody who is actually studying the meditation parts of it, the breathwork parts of it, the parts that are actually about connection versus just sex technique, because that's different, is that what we can learn, and we can learn sexual healing rituals for ourselves and for our partners. What we can learn is to stop disconnecting our sexuality from the rest of our lives. Like, we are sexual beings. And what we can learn is to embrace our sexual selves, ourselves as sexual selves. That's still compartmentalizing, right? It's like, it's holistic. It's completely there. But then how to bring consciousness to that instead of just primal directive. So most of the time people have sex, it's primally directed. It's about chemistry. It's about horniness. It's about getting rid of the tension that biology created so that we would go have sex. This is the anti that. This is build your capacity for expansion of pleasure. Get rid of the tension that wants you to release and build capacity to expand and embody more.
And how do you do that?
Right?
How actually, like, Because, I know I experience both, and this might be like, attributed to the woman's cycle throughout the month,
Sure, right, yeah, yeah.
but times where there's like, I just need to get that tension out. And then
Yep.
there's times where I feel more capable of expanding. So
Yeah.
can you speak to that?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things that, I have noticed after teaching for this long, and many of the women I've talked to over years and years, is that most people are only living in about a 2 out of infinity of arousal. They're actually getting rid of their expression of sexuality and their life force energy and their pleasure way faster. And in fact, women can actually learn how to get rid of that pleasure without even being turned on. Like without fully even being turned on, we can have an orgasm. So clearly orgasm is not really the key, even though if you don't have them very often, they're like the holy grail, right?
Right.
To expand your capacity to pleasure basically expands your capacity of pleasure of everything, not just sex.
Right.
So if you take that pleasure that you feel or that frustration that you feel and start to learn, and I'll tell you in a second how to do that, start to learn how to think about that more as, oh, this is a container, it's pressing up against a barrier. That's why it's frustrating. It's in one place of my body. If I expand it through the rest of my body, I can contain more. And then if I learn to expand it past my body, I can contain the universe in pleasure. What is it like to be so inspired? Because that's what inspiration is. That your entire being is buzzing at such a high level that you're in tingle, orgasmic bliss constantly. It is not about, I can't get any work done. It's about getting more done. I get more done than the Marines do in a day by 6 a.m. So, if you think the horniness of a 16-year-old boy is something, you should see the place I live. And it's not about horny anymore. It's about bliss. It's about expansion into that pleasure. It's not frustrating. It's not about sex. It's not about, oh my God, I gotta get off. It's about the fact that I'm off or on all the time.
Okay, so this, for some people, like how you alluded to or said that, some women are even having orgasms, and that seems like the holy grail.
Right.
So for some people who are like, how can we use neo-tantra for people who are experiencing shutdown, numbness,
Yeah.
are not either, they're not orgasmic at all, or maybe they can't orgasm with a partner,
or they're having what I call tension release orgasms versus just surrendering into orgasm.
Can you, talk on that.
Yeah. So first of all, and I'm going to go really against what you're probably going to hear about a lot of things about this, but most people try to get bigger and bigger tools to get to the orgasm. Harder and harder, pound and pound. The Hitachi wand, I think, like people laud it as the tool to use if you're non-orgasmic. To use the Hitachi wand, which to me, if I put it on the floor across the room, is probably still too intense for me. So I don't know what people are doing with that thing, but it's a freaking jackhammer. But so what happens is, because we're working to get something, and this is highly important, working to get it, to get off, to get the orgasm, to chase it, it is elusive. Because an orgasm and pleasure is not something you masculinely yang go after. As a woman, it's really about more subtle. So when I teach how to become orgasmic, how to experience more pleasure, I'm throw away the porn, throw away the fantasy, throw away the tools, your hand on your yoni, your hand across your pelvic, breathing into that statically, even though for the first 3 months, maybe 6 months, who knows how long, it could be boring. You're laying there thinking, why the hell am I doing this? And then one day you realize, there's nothing happening because I am that shut down and disconnected. But if I continue on this path of just showing up, meaning you're not thinking about the laundry or other things, whatever, 5 minutes a day, you just show up for yourself, your body will automatically start to engage. But I'm telling you, the harder you treat it, the more you pound on it, the more you do that, you're just going to chase that down the road. And you could have an orgasm through, like, they have these videos where the guy is just literally finger banging the crap out of the woman, like really horribly. And they call that like white tiger tantra. And literally the guy is just like a jackhammer. And of course she like ends up having an ejaculation, but she's just having a bladder release because her bladder's been like totally fried by getting slammed. But a lot of women and a lot of get told that's where you need to go. But if you go that way, you'll have reactions, but they're tension release. The body's trying to release the tension and everything that's happening, which is different into falling into pleasure. Different than allowing.
How do you learn to fall into pleasure? How do
Well,
you
breath work?
Okay, breath work.
Breathing, that subtle, just your hand on your yoni, just your hand on your vagina, your vulva on the outside. Mm-hmm. Being with that every day for 5 minutes, for how long it takes to all of a sudden start to feel things, and you will. I've used that technique on just that one, a whole book project of women who were non-orgasmic. And you have to have that patience, but this is where devotion comes in. We don't understand devotion to ourselves. We think devotion is kind of like a bad word. But when you devote to yourself, you devote to that exploration of subtlety within yourself, you relax, you breathe. Most of us are so tense and so in our heads that we have no hope of reclaiming that subtlety unless we do something like that. And it is that simple, literally 5 minutes a day. Do that. Just go do that. Like I said, I had one client, it was like 6 months. She's saying, Tanya, the only reason I'm doing this right now is because I'm trying to show you that you're wrong. And then one day she's like, oh my God, everything's starting to tingle. Things are starting to wake up. And this is a woman who had been sexually tortured, literally, for something like 25 years. And so our body is sensitive. It's highly sensitive. Even the way we get touched or allow ourselves to touch or touch ourselves is usually too rough. If you were to pretend that you had dust on you like a butterfly wings and started to touch yourself like that and asked to be touched like that, your body energy would come towards that. But we're so gross, right? And we're so hard and we're so yanged out on everything, masculine out on everything, that we're pushing our energy away. We're pushing it deeper away and not allowing it to.
It's interesting because I'm not incredibly ticklish, but like some people say that when they're touched really like that they're ticklish and they can't. What do you say? What do you say to that?
Well, one, maybe they need to actually be lighter, meaning it actually needs to be off the skin.
Energetic.
Right. Or maybe it just needs to be a nanosecond deeper, like, and not a lot of fussing around with the movement, right? Because there's tickle energy has this kind of movement, lots of movement. Static doesn't have movement. The more static hold.
My kitty cat is coming to
yeah. She's like, oh, am I hearing about gentle energy?
She ran away when we went to get her.
A little known thing is I was an animal behaviorist for many, many years. I do a lot of animal body work, and almost everybody I interview with their dogs, cats are like,
she's here.
Come hang out.
Yeah.
So that's we need patience though. And that's the one thing we don't tend to have is we believe that somehow we're missing something, which we are, but we're missing something bigger than just the orgasm. We're missing the subtle awareness and awakeness within ourselves.
And so how can we connect to that subtle awareness? What are is this breath work?
Well, breath work in the sense that if you do breath work to do it, you're going to miss the point too. This whole idea of being versus doing is really subtle. And once again, we tend to miss it because we're all goal-oriented trying to get it done. And, like I said, when you're getting it, you typically are missing it. So this idea of breath work, it would even start with awareness breath, which is just becoming aware of the breath you're having, not trying to manipulate it, not trying to change it, not trying to do anything with it, but become aware of it. So if you were to lay down and do a static hold, hand over your vulva, and just be aware of the hand, where it is, the pressure of the hand, the temperature of the room, the breath that's coming in and out of you, and just keep bringing it back to that awareness. You find out how in your head you are. You find out all the things that your head's spinning off, doing and looping. And this means that you're spending a lot of time in your head disconnected from your body. So your body's not showing up. There's no point for it to show up. So that subtlety, and when I'm saying 5 minutes a day, I'm literally saying 5 minutes a day. People do hours of breath work, people do hours of meditation, and I can take them back and give them 5-minute practices that change their life, even if they're doing all that. So don't think more is better. Don't think getting it done is better. Think, how can you devote to that aspect of care, subtlety, and awareness. Just that, 5 minutes a day.
This is like, self-love practice, like this commitment. I mean, there's the word devotion.
Exactly.
I mean, most people are never going to use the word devotion when we talk about self. I'm devoted to self would seem like some, selfish narcissist or something,
Right. Yeah.
But that if you're going to, that if you really want change, that we can shift our perception on what devotion actually is. And it seems like such a softer word than like commitment,
Yeah.
So
Well, it's deeper. I mean, devotion is deep, right?
Mm-hmm. So I love this idea of self-devotion, devoting being the devotee to yourself,
I know.
devoted to your own awakening and to your own pleasure and to your own process. I love that. I mean, I'm addicted to self-awareness and growth, and I love, I mean, it's what like drives me, and I love this idea of being devoted. It feels really yummy. It feels really divine, and like, instead of commitment, like commitment feels like I'm committed to working out. I'm committed to eating healthy. I'm committed to, devotion has like an opening for me.
Yeah, well, devotion is the key to lineage tantra practice. Without devoting to your guru, which in a sense means that you're devoting to yourself, but you just don't realize it. Sometimes we can devote to somebody else before we can devote to ourselves. And devotion to self, like you said, brings up for a lot of us that idea of narcissism, or that idea of selfishness, or that idea of that, because it's such a deep, devotion is deep.
And especially women in our culture, I mean, we're taught to devote to our husband and devote to our children. And now, after female empowerment, like devoted to career as well.
Right. Yeah.
But we're not given any, models of being devoted to ourselves.
Right. And I don't even think we're devoted to those things either. I think we're an obligation and responsibility to them.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not confuse that.
Word
And let's not us confuse that with what devotion, which is the ultimate in compassion. Devotion is the ultimate in compassion. And so when you ask somebody to love themselves, that self-love is important, and people parrot that all the time now, right? Then it doesn't really mean anything unless your parents programmed and patterned you to understand what self-love looks like. It's just something you say, and you think it's a vanity care, like, oh, I'm self-loving, I'm taking a bath. I'm self-loving, I'm getting my nails done. These are things that you do. There's vanity care, medical care, vanity not being a bad thing, vanity meaning just, right? And then there's like devotional, to me, a devotional practice is about the ultimate compassion and self-awareness to self, right? The ultimate bringing it back to self without a hard agenda, without a goal-driven, except for presence.
Can you talk about that more? I mean, people do talk about self-love in this way of like making space for yourself, making time for yourself to do things that you love, that aren't always involved taking care of your children and your husband, like, and your work with our modern life. So I'd love for you to talk more about, what the essence is that you're speaking to right there.
Well, I think all of those things are really super important, but still they can leave us empty. This is about the ultimate of filling from source. Because to me, if you don't feel from a spiritual connection, if you don't feel from source, which devotion connects you to that, then you're always empty, and you're having to fill up with all these external things, like giving yourself time and all these things. And you keep filling, but you never really feel abundance, like overflowing, right? Mm-hmm. You can have a crazy busy life. I run like 5 businesses and I do all of this stuff, but that's not how I feel. Like, I don't feel overwhelmed by anything. I feel completely resourced, but my resource starts not with self-love, because that to me is the second level. It starts with devotion to self and devotion to that spiritual source, which is really connecting to myself as the universe. And that's not mean to sound spiritually pithy. That's literally connecting to the inspiration of my breath, inhaling what is, exhaling what will be, without an agenda, and being completely present. That level of devotion takes practice.
Okay, so that level of devotion takes practice, but you're saying here that you can create that upwelling of resource
Yeah.
in your life to not feel overwhelmed. I mean, this is such a like a chronic problem in our
Right.
society to
Right.
feel overwhelmed by motherhood and wife and friends and family and work and the
Yep.
to-do list. So what I hear you saying, I just want to make sure I'm
Yeah.
accurate. What I'm telling our audience is that if you create even just a really intentional, devoted 5-minute practice per day, you really can, in that space, create enough resource to fill you, to fill
Yes.
your, and
Yeah.
not be.
Yeah, definitely. And because what that'll do is that intention and that devotion and that awareness to self will start to help you weed out the stuff in your life that isn't working. So it
Mm-hmm.
starts with something that is not a mental process. Because
Mm-hmm.
we have to understand that we have a thing in our brain called the amygdala, which is on alert all the time to keep us out of danger. But it's not working very well for most people anymore. In fact, it's telling you that, everything you're doing is dangerous. So we're in this constant chronic overwhelm and anxiety. This
Mm-hmm.
practice flies under the logical brain and the amygdala to resource, um, to integrate, there's words I'm using, but I want to use like what they really mean, because we use those words like presence and stuff. What it does is it harmoniously connects energetically to everything that is. And so when you're doing that, you are like, I'm not talking about filling from devotion to God. I'm talking about literally filling from a source of energy that's so much bigger than anything there is. So that's creating that harmonious experience within.
How does creating, this practice in our life, and devoting to ourselves in this way of creating this really easy, sounds like small,
Yeah.
practice, how is that directly linked to sexual freedom?
Well, because if we're not resourced and devoted to ourselves, we are still coming from programs and patterns about sex and about pleasure and about Hollywood expectations and things like that. We are not anywhere close to our authenticness. Would it be amazing to show up in a sexual experience with yourself or a partner, and in the midst of it, just stop because you felt like that's what needed to happen, and to be still and to just be, not to be driven towards trying to get off, not to be driven towards pleasing yourself, not towards driven toward pleasing your partner, not towards not breaking the mood. How many things are there messing with our freedom in sexuality is abundant, because if we don't have personal freedom, which is what this is really about, we don't have sexual freedom. Sexual freedom isn't just a part. I mean, like,
Right.
it's like the whole, pussy power thing. Everybody's all like, pussy power this. And now we've separated it out again.
Interesting. So, if you're going to start this practice and you like, let's say you're in a relationship, right? And
Yeah.
you're talking about, becoming more authentically connected to yourself. And let's say you're in a sexual situation, like you just mentioned,
Yeah.
and you're feeling authentically that you want to stop, what kind of communication should be taking place between you and your partner, either before, around, during, sex?
Definitely before. You don't want to land something like that in the middle of the bedroom, because your partner's not going to be prepared for it. And he's going to be like, whoa, what? Or she, well, what? Anybody's going to freak out, like, what is going on? Having the ability to know that you're going to be setting different types of boundaries or expectations around sex and around what's going on requires a compassionate communication, because you're really changing the total dynamic of what's happening and the expectations. If you can't do it yourself, find a professional to help you. That's for sure. That conversation, you can have a couple of sessions with somebody and change that. But what you want to do is, remember, compassion, which isn't, I found out you're not doing this right for me anymore, and I need to know. This is not how you talk to your partner. I heard Tanja say, no, don't bring me into it like that, please. So what you want to say is, look, I want to experience more pleasure in my body. That means that I'll experience more pleasure with everything that I do, including our relationship. And so what I'd like to experiment with is some of my boundaries and some of my expectations and goals around sex. So if we're making love, and sometimes I want to cry, but I don't cry because I'm wondering what you're going to think, I'm going to allow myself to cry. And what I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to just stop and be still. Maybe we'll need to separate and stop right then. Maybe we'll be able to go on. but I want to see what I'm actually authentically experiencing in that moment, instead of just saying, well, we're naked and we're having intercourse, or we're making out, and that means we need to keep going.
And would you suggest, like, let's say in that moment, that if you burst into tears crying during sex, which is totally absolutely normal, because sexual energy is linked to our emotions and
of course
of our human experience, that you could just say, hold me.
Right. That's what I mean. Like, the first thing is to just stop whatever action's happening and to just be in stillness. And maybe you don't want to be held. Maybe you just want to be in stillness. Or, like I said, maybe you want separation, and that's okay. But you need to set the person up to understand that you may ask for any of these things, and that it's not a personal rejection.
Right.
The thing about sex is, like, if we were talking about going to the zoo, and I was like, Christine, I don't want to go to the zoo today. You'd be like, okay, well, maybe I'll go by myself.
Right.
I'm like, sex, all of a sudden it's like, well, what do you mean you don't want to have sex with me?
Right.
It's like, it's an activity, just like everything else.
It becomes very personal, and inadequacy and defensive-ness and all that gets tied up into it. It's
talk about yourself, right?
Right.
I'm trying something new. I'm experimenting with this way of being, which I believe will lead me to greater experiences.
And I do want to talk about something that, because we're getting close to time here, I want to talk to something that you and I talked about before we hit the record button, was really about how, it's so important to set boundaries, and that a huge part of growing sexually, especially if you've come from a place of trauma or experienced shame, or you have been having the type of sex that you don't want and you want something different, that the number one thing to do is to create boundaries and reclaim your no.
Yes.
That after that, what happens, Tanya?
Well, reclaiming your no is one of the most powerful things, by the way, for men and women. Just saying, because I did a men's sexual healing thing where at the end of it, if a man could say no to sex, he healed all of his inadequacies and stuff. But most men don't believe they can ever say no. A lot of women believe they can't say no, and they can't say no anytime in between. So even if you're having great sex, I want you to practice no. I want everybody to practice no's. You can say, hey, I'm going to tell your partner, I'm going to be practicing no. And it could happen at any time. And when I say no, I want that respected. And then we might go back to what we were doing. Now, people worry about losing the mood. You can always create the mood. The mood isn't a hormonal thing. The mood is a personal thing. It's about just wanting to be present and be in that space. We lose the mood because we think it's going to be only one thing that ends up. That happens. So once we expand that container, but break all the boxes open, things get better. But what I want you to do is just practice no. Like you're being kissed, say, hey, you know what? No. And then you can kiss some more if you want. It's just because they know what's coming, right? You're having great oral sex. Somebody's giving you great oral sex. Say no. Say stop.
In the middle
of the best oral sex you've ever had, say no. You can always go back to it. But what you're learning to do is to stop and start in these places where you believe once you go there, you have to keep going, or you'll lose something. Lose the arousal, lose the mood, lose this. This is why men are so pushy too when it comes to sex. They're afraid if they lose the moment, lose the opportunity, they're in desperation.
Right.
So when both sexes, all genders, learn that none of this is lost, and in fact, by saying no, you find more, there's some real freedom.
That's when you can claim your yes. That's when your yes is really powerful, when it is balanced with your no. That is so, it is so empowering to give women, the voice around this, that they don't have to give it up. And for men too, but this summit is mostly about.
Right.
So, I want to tell you that my personal experience around reclaiming my no was just so powerful, more powerful than I could have ever imagined that it could be. And you created so much movement and so much space, and really, like, it is the sort, it's like, God, it's just so powerful. It's like I could go into any situation with my partner, and if something's not working, I can just say no. I don't feel like I need to kind of like push through something maybe that I'm not into, because then maybe it'll feel good on the other side.
Right. And that's what we're used to as women. That's what we do. We accommodate
Yes.
what's happening. And when we stop accommodating, we can start exploring. And
Yes.
then we can
Yes.
find the amazing arousal that most of us are missing most of the time.
Yes. Oh, beautiful, Tanya. You've got so much knowledge. Thank you so much. We are at our time, and I would love
Ah.
for you. I could just keep jamming with you and talking, but I'd love for you to tell our audience about the free gift that you're giving them today.
Yeah, so I've got a great ebook called Tantra Foundations, and it talks more about what Tantra is and the different aspects of it, as well as what I'm really excited about. So the book is awesome, and I definitely think you should grab it. That's yours no matter what. And then if you choose to go on in the little funnel that you're going to get when you click it, there's a free month trial to my Tantra Uncovered community, which basically goes into all of this and more. And you can be part of it as long as you want, but the first month is free. After that, it's $20 a month, which is really inexpensive.
Yes.
This stuff coming out here, more of
Oh,
it. So yeah, please take advantage of that and enjoy.
oh, Tanya, thank you so much. That's an amazing, generous gift. And I mean, Tanya just has so much experience, decades of experience, and so many personal experiences, as well as working with clients. And so I know this book is filled with juicy stuff. And I implore you to go and click on it. Tanya, thank you. Thank you so much for being here and for doing your work and following your passion in this life and making an impact.
Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Everybody enjoy, and remember, static hold and say no.
All right, you guys, until we see you next time, thank you so much for being here.